Hi guys, welcome to the first webinar of SciSports. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have people from over a dozen countries. I think we have 40 clubs watching this webinar. It can be a little bit hectic for the first time, but we would like to take you as a part of our journey and explain to you about the SciScale and how you can flag the most interesting players in the world by quantifying their quality and their potential. To give you a little bit of background, we founded the company 6 years ago as a scale-up from the University of Twente, where we saw the need for accurate data, especially with football manager players. We noticed it was awesome that you were able to flag all those players from all over the world, to find who are the hot talents in Chile, to find the most promising players in Romania, or find a player like Ronaldinho, who is already on his return, but who might be good enough for some ticket sales. We wanted to enable all these clubs, agents, federations, national leagues to the recruitment process. Since we started the company, actually the first transfer we helped with was the transfer of Wout Weghorst, who found his way based on statistics to Heracles Almelo, and later on one of our clients, Wolfsburg, signed him again from AZ. We also helped with more thorough data analysis. For instance, we helped with the transfer of Memphis Depay. We helped the Belgian Football Association by helping them to quantify the qualities of their opponents, the similar patterns of the coaches. What do they usually do? Where are the weaknesses? Where are the weak spots? Where are the passing chains? And we try to engage and help our clients by interpreting the data in the right way. Because we don't think that data in the recruitment process should be the goal. It should be a useful tool that can help you to enable you to find the right talents or to make the right decisions or to eliminate risk. What nobody wants is to sign a player who's actually shorter than you expect him to be, who had an injury in the past and you didn't know it in advance. So basically eliminating risk and finding the right talents is what we do for most of the clubs. In the past, we did it all by building reports, and these reports were customer requested. So a club asked us, can you find us the right talents in Scandinavia? Because more clubs were getting in, we wanted to enable them to find that players for themselves, to find which players are the fastest risers, to scout Matthijs de Ligt way in advance, or for instance to find that hidden gem in Serbia. If you are looking for a talent in Scandinavia, you don't have to drive through or fly through the entire country. And if you want to go to Serbia to find the right central defender, you can just check out and find that Svetozar Markovic is a really talented youngster and he's playing it. Later on, Jacco and Jan van Haren will get more into detail. But also I want to share with you what we are building for the future. Please leave your comments in the webinar, because at the end of this webinar, we'll answer all your questions. The first webinar is purely focusing on how can you flag interesting talents, or how can you use data-driven player recruitment, and how can it enrich your current services. But the next webinars, we also want to emphasize on building your own models, how to implement computer vision to increase your performance of the players, to measure their viewing patterns, to measure everything that you want to measure. Because basically we rebuild the game of Football Manager right now, and we are rebuilding the game of FIFA with our new product BallJam. I'll emphasize one of the next webinars. So please, all your comments, share them with us, because that's useful input. And if you want to have a more in-depth session with one of our data scouts, please also reach out to Jacco Slot, who will also present during this webinar. So first of all, we're going to start with a short introduction by Jan van Haren about the SciScale Index. Jan is our head of data and analytics. He has a PhD in computer science, specialized on artificial intelligence in the sports industry. So also any questions or any remarks that you have on that, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we'll be pleased to leave those questions and answer them in the end. I think for me, that's it now. So please welcome here on stage Jan van Hagen.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Giels. My name is Jan van Hagen, and I'm the head of data analytics at SciSports. I will now start my slide deck before we dive in. So in this webinar, I'd like to highlight Insight's flagship feature, which is the SciSkill Index. The SciSkill Index is a unique player index that ranks football players around the globe. The SciSkill Index assigns two numbers to each player, the so-called SciSkill value, which reflects a player's current ability, and the so-called potential value, which reflects a player's peak ability. The SciSkill covers 90,000 active players from 3,700 clubs in 244 competitions. The algorithm powering the SciSkill Index crunches the numbers for about 2,000 matches each week. So this slide shows the SciSkill and potential evolution for Manchester City midfielder Kevin De Bruyne. The vertical axis ranges over SciSkill and potential values, whereas the horizontal axis ranges over time. So the solid orange line shows the SciSkill evolution throughout De Bruyne's career, whereas the dashed blue line shows his potential evolution. So the blue dots on the horizontal axis at the bottom show permanent transfers from his mother club Racing Genk to Chelsea, from Chelsea to Wolfsburg, and from Wolfsburg to Manchester City. The black dots in between mark the start and end dates of loan spells from Chelsea to first Racing Genk again, and then Werder Bremen. So in addition to these SciSkill and potential evolutions, the Insight platform also reports the career high values each player obtained throughout his career. So for De Bruyne, the career high SciSkill is 147.8, whereas his career high potential is 152.2. Furthermore, the platform also shows each player's development on both criteria over the past 9 months. So in the case of De Bruyne, who was set back by some injuries during the past few months, his SciSkill dropped with 2 points and his potential dropped with 7 points, as is shown in red. So these development scores are especially helpful to identify players who are in either a good or a bad shape at this moment. To put these SciSkill and potential scores into more perspective, the Insight platform also shows the so-called league indicators for most important football leagues in the world. So these league indicators are simplified box plots showing the SciSkill ranges that include the majority of the players in each league. The figure shows that the Premier League, which is represented by the gray box at the right, is the strongest league in terms of SciSkill, followed by the Spanish La Liga, the German Bundesliga, the Italian Serie A, and the French Ligue 1. So, well, although reported as a single number in most places in the Insight platform, these SciSkill values actually decompose into 5 underlying numbers. However, we combine these underlying numbers into a single number to enable the comparison of players both within a league and across leagues. So the first underlying number is the player's offensive skill, which reflects the number of goals his team is expected to score per 90 minutes against an average opponent while this player is on the pitch. Similarly, the second number is the defensive skill, which reflects the number of goals his team is expected to concede per 90 minutes while this player on the pitch. The third number is the resistance factor, which reflects the level of the average opponent in the player's domestic competition. And in addition to that, the fourth number is the offensive share, which is the rate at which the player contributes to his team's offensive play. So how much he's involved in scoring goals. Typically, this value is high for attackers and low for defenders and goalkeepers. Similarly, this fifth number is the defensive share, which is the rate at which the player contributes to his team's defensive play. So in contrast to the offensive share, this number is high for goalkeepers and defenders and low for attackers. So the SciSkill index algorithm combines these 5 underlying numbers in a clever way to arrive at a single SciSkill value for each player, which can be compared across leagues. So at this point, one important question still remains: how do we get these 5 underlying numbers, and how do we update them? So in order to cover nearly 100,000 players across the world, the SciSkill index algorithm operates on so-called match sheet data. For each of the 2,000 matches that are included in our index every week, these data provide the goals scored by each team, the position of each player in the match, and the number of minutes played by each player. Furthermore, the algorithm also considers some personal information about each player, such as his age. So for each match, the SciSkill index algorithm performs 3 steps. In the first step, before the match, the algorithm predicts the number of goals scored and conceded by each team using the player ratings for the players who played in the match. In the second step, during the match, the algorithm observes the actual number of goals scored and conceded by each team. Then in the final and third step, after the match, the algorithm updates the ratings of the individual players by comparing this predicted number of goals scored and conceded before the match with the actual number of goals scored and conceded observed during the match. So for example, if a team is expected to win a match with 2-1 before the match was played and eventually wins 3-0, its players have overperformed according to the underlying ratings, and these ratings will increase. In contrast, if the team loses the match, despite being expected to win it, its players have underperformed according to the underlying ratings, and their ratings will decrease. So in addition to this, the SciSkill index algorithm also recomputes each player's potential after each match. So more technically, this potential value reflects the expected maximum SciSkill that a player will reach throughout his career. The slide again shows the SciSkill and potential evolutions for Kevin De Bruyne throughout his career. And as can be seen in this figure, our algorithm already computed an expected maximum SciSkill or potential of 114 when the Belgian midfielder was only 19 years old and still playing for his mother club, Racing. To arrive at this prediction, the SciSkill potential algorithm analyzes the SciSkill evolutions for thousands of players who have reached their peak SciSkill values already. Typically, players reach their peak SciSkill values in their late 20s or early 30s. And this slide shows the SciSkill and potential evolutions for 6 players who are age 30 or above. So like the SciSkill algorithm itself, the SciSkill potential algorithm also proceeds in 3 steps. So the first step involves training a machine learning model using the historical SciSkill observations, as well as the 5 underlying numbers for thousands of players who have reached their peak SciSkills already. In the second step, we use the trained machine learning models to project the further development of a player's SciSkill evolution for those players who have not yet reached their peak SciSkills. And the third and final step, we estimate a player's potential by computing the maximum SciSkill that each player will reach according to our projections of their SciSkill evolutions. So yeah, that was a quick introduction of the SciSkill index algorithm and the SciSkill potential algorithm. This is all I've got for today. I will now hand over to my colleague Jacco, who will explain how the player recruitment process at football clubs looks like, and how our data-driven tools such as Insight and the SciSkill index can be extremely valuable to clubs.
Okay, thank you, Jan, for the clear explanation about the size scale and the size scale potential. My name is Jacco Slot, responsible for sales and marketing at SciSports. Therefore, in close contact with clubs in the top 5 competitions in Europe, but also clubs in MLS in China. As Jan mentioned already, we cover almost 250 leagues in our Inside portal. So that means that we are in contact with a lot of clubs all around the world. I'm going to explain more about Inside. I will give a live demo of Inside, so how you can actually use our portal in the recruitment process. But before I'll do that, I will inform you about how data is being used in the recruitment process of clubs. This is actually the scouting process, how clubs normally scout. In where you see already 3 stages. The first stage, in our opinion, is the stage where you can use data, because our question is always, when you know that there are almost 100,000 players who are actually capable to play for you as a club, where do you start searching? Because you cannot be everywhere, you cannot cover all leagues, so data can help you actually to search, compare, and select in that whole range of players, in all those 90 or 100,000 players worldwide. With data and with smart filter functions, you can easily find, for example, the right winger which suits to your demands based on data. But it's also a good way to validate tips from agents, because we hear from a lot of clubs already that you get lots of tips from agents. And how do you actually validate those tips? You can watch them by videos, but validate each tips based on videos takes you a lot of time. And by using data or by using our size skill index, you can easily check, is a player actually good enough to play for us, or does he have the potential to play for us in the future? If the answer is yes, never ever buy a player only based on a tip or based on data. Always go to the second stage, and that's watch a player on videos or visit a match of a player. Because data can tell you that he's a good player, but you need to see it with your eyes. How does he behave? What kind of mentality does he have? Does he fit into your group? So there are more parameters to a player than only data and the things we cover with data. Also estimate the quality of a player. You can easily see how good is a player if you compare it to other players based on data. So in the first stage, we always say, make sure that from the list of 90 or 100,000 players worldwide, you come up to a small list of players which you can watch videos from or decide to visit matches. And then in that second stage, the question will raise, what type of player is he? Because you have a certain type of playing, for example, a right back, let's say Dani Alves at his period at FC Barcelona, there was a certain data profile behind his way of playing. And if you want to find a new type like Dani Alves, you can easily analyze his data. What is he doing on the pitch? What type of player is he? And there again, can data be very helpful, because you can analyze the profile, the way of playing, like in this example of Dani Alves during his Barcelona period, and then you can analyze based on data which players are actually quite similar in the way of playing like Dani Alves. So there again, data can help you sometimes to confirm what your eyes already saw. So always use your eyes, but we all know that looking with your eyes is still a bit subjective. We say use data to get objective information, and in this case, to get a certain player profile on a player or on a certain position. Third stage will always be define actually if you're going to sign a player, yes or no. But before that, we also say use data actually to determine if this will be a good next step for that player. Can he develop as much as you expect him to develop? And is there actually a fit with your club based on data? And then, of course, you make the decision, you look a player in the eyes and you talk with a player that you're actually going to sign a player, yes or no. But these are the 3 stages in which clubs currently use data, and where you can use a company like ours as well. Actually, what is then the added value of data-driven scouting? Basically, it's to us, it's quite simple. Data and data intelligence will make sure that you find the best and most realistic players if you use certain filters. I will explain later how you can use filters and how you can make that process more effective. I already explained, find a similar type of player. You have a way of playing, you have a way of approaching players. You want a box-to-box midfielder, then data can help you to actually find a type like a box-to-box player. Also, it's impossible to get coverage in all those countries, which Jan just mentioned, almost 250 countries. It's impossible to have your eyes in all countries. So data can give you coverage in those countries where you don't have presence, and you can get alerts on players who make their debut in certain competitions. Again, validate tips from football experts in an efficient way. At the end, the whole data process will save you time and money because you make the process far more effective to bring down the whole scope of almost 100,000 players to maybe 5 or 10 players who are really interesting for you to follow in your process. That also brings focus to your recruitment process. Make sure that you follow the players which are actually good players to get to your squad. Also, in the end phase, you have your scouting reports. You know that you want to sign a player, but still it's all subjective based on what your eyes actually saw from a player. We say that's okay, still use it, but also use data to support your decision-making process. What is the objective view on a player and what is the subjective view on a player? That combination for us brings a good overview to make your decision. At the end, of course, you want to reduce risk and get as much objective information as possible, because reduced risk is reducing failures, and at the end, you want to minimize failures in your recruitment process. Jan already mentioned, and I told you already, that we are going to give a live demo on Insight. All these things I just mentioned are actually in Insight. So in the demo I'm going to give to you, I will give a direct overview of the functions in our portal in which you can easily filter players. As you see Insight, I'm going to show it on my laptop, but you can use Insight on your mobile phone or on an iPad or whatsoever as well. So on multiple devices you can use Insight. Okay, let's go to the demo. For people who are following this webinar and who want to actually try it themselves, because I'm going to show it now in a few simple steps, but there are many more steps you can take in our portal Insight. We have a free trial available, so just click on the free trial button and you can get a trial and get to know more about the portal Insight. As you see here, this is our Insight dashboard, which is actually the starting point of our Insight portal. Highest potentials under 20, that's some basic information we show, but also really interesting in the transfer period are the recent transfers. So you see directly which players today made a move. Sometimes it's a move on loan, sometimes it's a transfer, but you're actually, all the transfers are in top of your mind, as you can see. Two ways of using it. You see a search bar here, but also an app drawer, which you can go into different apps. Jan already gave an example of Kevin De Bruyne, and as I want to show it in Insight, you can easily fill in the name of Kevin De Bruyne, and then you go directly to the player profile of Kevin De Bruyne. I'm not going to explain what we see here because Jan already told you, but what I wanted to show you was the search bar that you can easily search or validate tips, which I just explained by filling in a name or a competition. It's also a possibility. So when I fill in Eredivisie, I will directly go to all players in the Eredivisie. First thing I want to show is our player app. So that's where we heading to. If we go to the player app, you see directly at the moment more than 70,000 players. I will hide this one. You see directly 70,000 players actually as a starting point of our search. And for example, here on the left, you see all kind of filter opportunities. So I can filter on certain positions. You see here directly age. In this case, we want to have a big talent. So let's say I want to fill in the first filter, and that's actually players lower than 20 years. You see directly that the amount of players are changing. So almost 9,000 players still in our database. then we say, okay, we can fill in all kind of things like size scale, like market value, when does this contract end, what's the height, what's the nationality. But in this example, I want to know what are the biggest talents in, let's say, Slovenia, because you might do not have coverage in that league. So therefore, you see now there are 87 players in Slovenia. And what we can do now is actually two things. We can sort on current size scale, but we can also sort on potential. Jan already explained what is size scale and what is potential. But as we are looking for young talents below the age of 20, I'll filter on potential descending. Why? Because I want to have the biggest talent in Slovenia on top of it. Here are some first players which are talented in Slovenia. So you see directly on top of the list, in this example, Dusan Stojnovic. He's only 18 years old and he already has a potential of almost 90. He actually is a center back. So if I click on him, I go to his profile, you see directly the same profile like we saw with Kevin De Bruyne. So for all players which we have in the database, you will find the same graphs as Jan also showed us from Kevin De Bruyne. But this is just a small one example of actually how you can use all kind of filters. Still, I can say, okay, it's interesting to know it in Slovenia, but I want to know it in Croatia, let's say, as well. We just add a league to it here, Croatia, and we have 2 leagues, and we see we now have 179 players, and the biggest talent who's playing in Croatia is Dani Olmo with the highest potential of 101.9, currently already 67. So that means that he actually already has the quality to play in a league like the Eredivisie. And here you see his career path. So what is his potential and how good is he now? What we can always do is download this player details. So when you think this is an interesting player, you want to share it with your colleagues, just click on the download button and you will get him. You can send him my email, or you can easily add a player to a shortlist. In this way, I already created some shortlists, but you can also make your own shortlist. So let's say Croatia, I'll make my own shortlist and I'll make sure that I put Dani Olmo on the list of Croatia. Simple as it is. So now he's on your shortlist, which you can find, I will explain later here in the shortlist app. I will show it later to you. But again, from out of the database of more than 70,000 players, you get to a small list of, in this case, 197 players, only by doing actually an age filter, a league filter. Those are the only 2 things which I did. Let's remove all the filters. And now I'm going to look at positive development based on the current size scale. Why? I actually want to know which players grow are actually the fastest risers in certain competitions. So again, I look at the filter opportunity leagues, and now I say, okay, I don't have presence in leagues like, let's say, in the Nordics. So Sweden is an interesting league for me where I don't have presence. So the Allsvenskan and the Superettan I want to fill in. But as we're talking about the Nordics, also Finland is interesting. I'll go for this league, and let's say Norway as well, and to end it up with Denmark, just to give you an overview of some interesting players over there. So what happened now, we actually already have 1,400 players. But what we want to do is actually make sure that the player which we're going to follow has already a decent level. How do we define decent level? That is totally up to the level within your club. Let's say your average level is at the moment 50. Then we change the size scale here on 50, because we know players who have a lower size scale than 50 are not interesting for you to follow, because they're currently just not good enough to be direct reinforcement. So what do we have here? A first list of 395 players, and now you already see the size scale and potential. But I just mentioned, I want to know which players are the fastest risers. So I'll add the filter size scale development descending, And what do we see here? Andreas Skoff Olsen, for example, is a player who grew in the last 6 months with more than 16. So actually, he's the fastest riser based on his current size scale in the countries I just named. But also, Matthias Christensen is a fast riser. Do you need him to sign him directly? Of course, no. I already mentioned it in the process. The next step will always be watch videos of him. What kind of player is he? Or analyze more data from him. Analyze what type of player is he, and is this type of player, for example, Matthias Christensen, a central midfielder. You might want to have a box-to-box midfielder, or you might want to have a ball-winning midfielder. There are whole other different typical type of players and data with the use of data. I'm not going to explain it now to you because this webinar is based on the size, scale, and potential, but we can also give you lots of information about what type of player is he based on his data. So just again, an easy filter on the way you can use our portal. Also, contract end is in our portal. So for example, now if we want to add this list with, for example, a contract end, let's say I want to see all those players in these leagues which contract will end in June 2020, then again you see an extra filter, and it left me with 144 players which are actually capable to play for me, which contract ends before June 2020 in those leagues, and sorted on the fastest risers in the current period. Okay, so all kind of information in there. What I'm going to do now is actually explain our shortlist, because I just mentioned that you can put a player to your shortlist. I will do it here again. For example, 2 players, and say add them to your shortlist. I already made some shortlists, so I will go directly to the shortlist. And for example, here I have a list with attacking midfielders. In this case, I have Mahrez and Hakim Ziyech on my shortlist. And I can imagine during the whole process that you say, okay, I want to compare these 2 players with each other, because potentially they're both interesting signings for me, but let me see how they are related to each other, or which player is better, or how is the career path of both players. So you see here Mahrez, Hakim Ziyech, some basic information, their size scale and size scale potential. But what is really interesting if you compare players is this. We have Mahrez in blue, Hakim Ziyech in orange, and you see actually directly what, and Jan explained it already, that's the resistance level, the resistance factor. And you see that the Champions League matches for Ziyech are massive in his career. So he actually has a positive development over the last year or half a year. But the year before, when Ajax wasn't playing Champions League, he was only playing at the Eredivisie. You saw a stable line, and that was the point where Mahrez actually took over him based on the fact that he's playing in the Premier League. So therefore, the resistance level is so important in the size scale. You can have good attacking influence or defensive influence, but the level where you have that influence, that's so important. And you see then here that actually Ziyech during his whole career was better than Mahrez, but at a certain point, Mahrez was playing Premier League, Ziyech Eredivisie, but he's going there now again based on his matches in the Premier League. Just an easy way to compare players. Again, I can download the details and send it to a colleague of mine as well. One last quick thing I want to show to you is our search wizard. That's actually an easy way to analyze everything what's going on for you as clubs. Let's suggest that we are FC Twente because we're based in Enschede, and they are our neighbors. And we are going to find a reinforcement, and our aim is actually to become champion. Let's say we are looking for a left winger. So we are looking for a left winger who needs to be a direct reinforcement, so first team player. And we go to next. What the system will do is actually analyze how do the player needs to be to play for Twente. Maximum age 24. Let's say again that his contract needs to end in, let's say, June 2020. And of course, he needs to player is a EU citizen because of the budget. A small summary of the answers I just gave, and now I'll ask the system, okay, finish this, and he's going to analyze which players are actually good players to have on the list for FC Twente. What we see now directly is if I swipe a little bit up, that there are almost 50 players who can play for FC Twente. I will add one thing to it, because there are some budget issues, might be some budget issues. So let's say we want to pay maximum of 500,000 euros. Then here you have a direct list based on how good does a player need to be, maximum size scale of 63 to play for Twente and to reach their goal to become champion. What needs to be his potential, of course higher than 54. What's his age, 24, market value, main position, left wing, contract end, EU citizen. If we look at the first list, you get here based on potential and based on current size scale, for example, Mohamed Rai. There's far more information behind this. I can go on for several hours, I guess, but we only have limited time. So I'll advise you, if you see this demo and think, okay, I want to know more about how I can actually use this in my daily job, please contact us by the button to actually ask for a free trial, or our team of data scouts. They are more than willing to give you a live demo, which is a little bit longer than the demo I gave to you, and explain to you how you can use Insight in your daily job. That's what we like to do. So please get in contact with us if you want to know more about our portal Insight. For now, this session, I want to thank you for your attention. We will go into a Q&A, so please ask as much questions as possible. We are more than willing to answer those questions. For now, thanks for looking at this live demo.
So trying to answer some questions, please feel free to provide us with some additional questions as well, but we already got a lot of them. First one, Jacco.
I already talked for half an hour, I guess, but I will do the first question. Okay. Yeah, the question is, who are the main clients and which football professionals within a club are actually using the Insight platform? And what we see mainly is that the head of recruitment or the head of scouting or the technical director, those are the people who actually work with us, because they want to make sure that their scouting process is much more effective than it was in the past. So mainly they use our portal as a sort of management tool, and with that information, they give information to the team of scouting, which actually follow players by video scouting or by live. So that's actually how clubs currently use us. So main functions: technical director, head of recruitment, and head of scouting. Yeah.
Another question: what if a great player is playing in a shitty team? Well, one of the examples that we saw happening during a match was during the season was when Twente became champion. Afterwards, Ziyech went to the club, and Twente performed really bad, but Ziyech was still one of the most influential players of the team. Then you could see that the team was declining a lot, the total quality of the team, but Ziyech was remaining stable. So sometimes you see a problem, you see that the players, when they play or when they don't play, you see a huge difference. For instance, when United was playing with Daley Blind, they gained more points than playing without Daley Blind, even though United was playing several bad seasons where they underperformed. Daley Blind, even though he did not always play the matches, he still underperformed.
Yeah, and I think you had the same with Wout Weghorst in the beginning when he was playing at Emmen. He actually had the same, that he was playing in a poor team, wasn't the first team regular, but we already measured that the influence Wout Weghorst had on the team result was actually high. So the results with Wout Weghorst were simply better than the results without Wout Weghorst. And basically that was the starting point of actually making the size skill back then.
Another question: can you think of a player you totally misjudged his potential? I think when we see that players, we see a lot of those players. For instance, the two Marios. What data can never measure is mentality or the physique of a player. We cannot measure that by the data we use now. The two Marios are Mario Balotelli and Mario Götze. And when you take a look at Mario Götze, he scored the most important goal of all the competitions. He scored in the World Cup final in injury time, and he scored the World Cup winner. Mario Balotelli, I think when he was 18, he was also an outstanding talent. But we all know when you go and steal go-karts from the store, that doesn't necessarily make you a good football player. And we predicted him to had the potential to become as good as Ronaldo or Messi, but after 18, 19, he definitely failed. So mentality, injury proneness, decisions in your life, those are the things we cannot measure, but we can only flag the influence of the players.
But also the other way around, because if you go back to Wout Weghorst, we expected him in our models to be a top player in the Dutch Eredivisie, but maybe because of his mentality, he ended up in the Bundesliga and is actually better than we expected him to be. We already expected him to be good, but not as good as we expected. Some future developments when we're looking to the right where the answers, the questions are. Yeah, main things for us at the moment are two things. Player roles, that's massive for us, which we explained already. So give me a certain type of player based on data. That one is really important for us. And the second one is add shadow teams to our inside portal so that you can actually build your future teams and see, okay, if I sign this player, what does it mean for the total strength of my team?
Where do you get the data from? We got several questions about this. The contract ending. Basically, we use a lot of sources for this. Our main data provider is Wisecout. We get the direct API of all the data, and we build all our models on top of that data. For the rest, we have several other smaller parties that we also combine to get a big coverage of the matches.
Good question. We have, if every club in Europe, hypothetically speaking, uses the database, won't everybody be searching for the same players then? Yes, that can be, but you see that isn't the case. Why? For example, you're a mid-table club in Holland, you have an average size skill of maybe 60, 65, then you're not going to look for players who have a size skill of 90 or 100 or 110 because you just cannot afford them. They will make a next step to the Bundesliga or the Premier League. So within your level, you're going to search for suitable players based on the size skill. So no, that's actually basically the simple answer to the question.
How do you keep insight up to date players? Well, basically, when a player played approximately 750 minutes, we can give a good estimation of the base quality of the players. And after each match, we analyze 2,000 matches every week. Our size skill gets a daily update after every match. So as soon as he starts playing, we get the data and we update the models.
What's the highest size scale ever? There is actually not a highest size scale ever. Yeah, in terms of what player reached the highest size scale ever, that's Lionel Messi. But things are developing, and we cannot say right now that it is 150 or 155 because we just don't know. It's a matter of how big is your influence, what results do you make as a player or as a team. So there's no maximum in it, but the best player ever in history still is Lionel Messi. At the moment, the two best players are Neymar and Raheem Sterling based on their current size scale. Sterling because he's still quite young, and Neymar because the way he's performed over a long period now. But again, Messi all-time best in all models.
What kind of data resources you use to build player profiling models? As we already mentioned, Jacco a lot of player roles, so you also can determine if it's a wingback or a fullback or a poacher or a target man. And for that, we use event data that we buy from Wisecout, our data provider. And in the future, we want to add tracking data as well, but now we purely base it on event data.
What we do with players who are injured, Manuel Neuer is a good example because last year he was injured for almost a full season. Yeah, you get a penalty when you're inactive, and especially also when you get older. Neuer is, I think, 32 or 34, somewhere on that age. And yeah, you get a penalty because you don't play. You need to play to actually grow in your size skill. So you will always see that when a player is injured, his size skill goes down. Doesn't mean that he's a poor player, no, but he needs to play again to actually come back to level.
How can you predict the player's potential at the age of 18, 19 if you don't have any data from his youth career? Well, for several players, we do have the data of their youth careers, and we are working pretty hard on that aspect to get more and more data. But still, getting a good indication of base level of the players, therefore we need 750 minutes in a competition that we track. So, for instance, in the Netherlands, we grab the Belofte competition, which is second, but also the second division, the third division. So we try to gain as much data as we can, and we set the base at 750 minutes of playing time in a rated team.
Okay, let's see which questions we didn't answer yet. So we're scrolling down the questions. Yeah, we get a question if we were find out what midfield. Yeah, of course we cannot answer that question. We are more than willing to help every club in the world with our data intelligence approach, but in this session we're for sure not going to tell which player they should buy. Let's see, Giels.
I think this is also a good one. Goalkeepers are the busier ones sometimes showing up better. So are the busy goalkeepers better? Well, that's not the case because we don't measure what they're actually doing on the pitch, but basically measuring their influence on their team. So what we see, for instance, when we use event data models, we see that Neuer is, for instance, not the best player based on the actions he performs on the pitch. But when we take a look at his influence, he has been massive before his injury. He's declining now, but his influence on every team where he played was incredible. So it doesn't matter if you're really busy or not.
I think this is a nice question as well, Giels, because we were both addicted to Manager. So there's a question about Football Manager. Maybe you can answer it.
Yeah, could you comment on how the Football Manager database differs in accuracy as compared to SciSports SciScale when looking at their current ability and potential ability? Well, of course, that was the way how we came up with the idea to build the SciScale and the potential. The qualities of the individual players are measured by individual scouts there, and we do it fully automatically. What we do see is that we can also define wonder kids like Matthijs de Ligt, Diego Lainez, Mbappe, and all those players. They show up as wonder kids in our database as well. So I think we have several things in common.
Good questions, which we see here. How do you support clients with a help desk, with data scouts, or maybe with some customer reports? Good question, and the answer is in your question. So yes, we help clubs with the Insight portal, which we showed in this webinar, but we also have a group of data scouts which can give all kind of information based on your questions. We also have custom reports, so if you are looking for a certain player in a certain league, our team of data scouts are more than willing to help you. So with our Insight portal, or you use our data scouts or our customer reports as sort of consultant on a daily job.
Yeah, and they can also go more in depth. So using a lot of more of the models we already built but did not implement yet in the Insight platform, they can be of use for you as well. And then you can get a data scout who performs an individual report with additional information on the matches.
Question which I see, how do you keep your database up to date? Actually, Giels already mentioned it. We use the Y-Scout data and it updates every week. So basically, when a player is in Y-Scout, you will find them in our portal as well.
Where do you draw data for younger players? We can get some additional information which will be released in February. So we to that question in the next session. When I sign up for the trial, can I start immediately to start to look for new players? Well, the window is open for 1 more week. I think Jacco has nothing to do tonight, so he can get back to you after this session.
I hope that my wife isn't watching because she will think otherwise. But no, you can start immediately, directly when you have to log in, and our team of data scouts can help you. Actually, we already gave a demo, but there's far more info in Insight, and our data scouts can help you to start straight away. What do we have here? Yeah, how do you account for player and team play similarities? A great passer in a long ball team. Yes, sometimes data isn't going to tell you what isn't happening. We had it with a goalkeeper. He was good on high balls, but if you look at data, it's manually tagged. And if a goalkeeper comes out of his box only once with a high ball from the side of the field, then he has 100% on high balls. But he should have come 5 times a match, but he didn't come. Yeah, going to tell you that he's actually not that good on high balls because he should have come 5 times, but he didn't come. So there's always limitation in what data can tell you, but again, it will give you direction, sometimes confirmation, but always look with your eyes as well to get the confirmation for the data or to give you direction. So always a combination between subjective and objective information.
Are you thinking about introducing more statistics in the portal? For example, I wanted number 6 who plays minimum 80% of his balls forward and not backwards to his central defenders. I believe that's already in the platform. Passes to the final third at least.
Yeah.
They're already on the stats page, but the next webinar will go more in depth into the data. Also, another question: where do you get the market values from? And right now we just get them either from Wisecout or from Transfermarkt, which is also in their database. The value of building our own market values, so we're building a joint model that improves the accuracy of that.
Yeah, good question about a late bloomer. For example, Jamie Vardy became very good pretty late in his career. Again, if you copy it to Wout Weghorst, he actually started not when he was 17 years old, but at a later age at Emmen, played already for a club like Dato in Friese Veen at amateur level, but made his debut at an older age. But you can see he's performing well at a certain level, so that's why potential is that important as well, because we measure potential as well. So yes, it can be that in this case Jamie Vardy wasn't yet good enough when he was 22 years to play in the Premier League, but our models could already predict that he's had the potential to play in the Premier League, and he ended up there. So that's why we always measure his current level, size scale, and also his potential level. How good can he be at the age of 28 or later?
Where do you see a product going? What's the vision? Well, we want to become the best player performance and recruitment platform that is in the market. So for that, we know that we talk a lot to our clients and ask, what do you want? And one of the first things was, I want to have a shadow team where I can see the quality of my current players and the players I want to sign. So that's the next addition to the platform. Now they're also telling I want more in-depth information about the players. So we're adding the player roles. We want additional stats that provide us direct insights, because what we get a lot from the markets that they don't want to see just stats dumped at them, but they want actionable insights. So we want to become the best platform in actionable insights, and our ultimate goal is to unravel the game of sports, of football.
We get a question: why are the offensive players only getting more scores than defensive players in every portal? That's not the case in our portal, so good question. It's all about the influence attacking wise and defensive wise, and Atletico Madrid is a good example. The way they're defending, you see that the keeper Jan Oblak has a very high size scale based on the good defensive results of Atletico Madrid, but also their defenders. So it's not always the case that you need to score a lot of goals or give a lot of assists or whatsoever. No, it's the influence you have attacking wise and defensive wise.
Let's see. We know that some players perform well in some clubs, but not on others because of different team tactics and colleague styles. Do you consider that for recommendation? How infer that? Well, that was actually what we did also with Memphis, where we investigated where his playing style would suit. So then you take a look at the pressure, the passing style, is it direct or is it with long balls? Are they playing over the wings? Do the attackers have to defend a lot? And all those different aspects is what we can measure based on the in-depth match data. That's what we did for the Belgian national team, where we uncovered the qualities of the entire team. So we do that with our data scouting reports, but not yet in our platform.
We get a question: how young at certain levels? Good question. I think a good example was last year with Mason Mount at Vitesse. He played a whole season. He grew in his size skill. But you also had a really talented player, Tammy Abraham from Aston Villa. He played a similar amount of matches in the Premier League. What you see then, because the resistance level in the Premier League is higher, that actually Tammy Abraham is currently at a higher size skill than Mason Mount. Does it mean that Abraham is better? No, the potential of Mason Mount is still higher than Tammy Abraham. But Mason Mount needs to play on a level like the Premier League with higher resistance level to actually get to the level where we expect him to be. So that's, again, what Jan already mentioned, the resistance level, important for the size scale calculation.
Can you export more detailed data from the system beyond the size scale score? Yes, you can do that. There's for every player, there's depending on his position, you see position-specific stats. And when you compare, for instance, Matthijs de Ligt with Piqué, Chiellini, and Stones, you will see the player-specific stats for these players, and you can export that as well.
We get questions about our action values model, which you can read a lot about on our website. Good question. Yeah, we will integrate the action values into our portal. The action value basically measures what's the influence of a pass or a dribble or whatsoever on scoring chance. So, for example, I give a pass to Giels now, he scores a goal. That's an easy pass because it is actually an assist, but everybody could give that pass. But when I pass the ball to Giels over 40 meters or 50 meters, he's one-on-one against a goalkeeper, but he didn't score a goal, then it's not an assist, but it's an easy chance for him. Then the value of that pass, in our opinion, needs to be raised higher than just a simple pass to Giels or to Messi, who scores a goal after dribbling past 3 players, but still I end up with an assist. So actually, what is the result of the pass and what's the value of the pass? Good question again.
Yeah, we get several questions about managers, if we are able to measure them. We can get an indication of how they always play, but it's one of our research topics right now to investigate if a manager is an educator. So does he make sure that the young players will become better, or that he only plays all players and plays on the result? Does he has a size skill for managers as well? Those are the things we are in our research phase, but not yet in the platform. The question is there an API if we want to add the data in our own tools? Yes, that's possible. We have an API and it's already integrated in the client's database.
We get questions about how much is the software and the membership on Insight on the website, but we will answer questions one-on-one as well. So we will give answers to that as well. But on our website, you can see the different packages which you can actually get a membership on.
Okay, it's time for 2 more questions. Let's see. What kind of technology do you use to measure the players? For the size scale, it's a maximization expectation model, which is an iterative machine learning model. And for the potential, we also use a k-nearest neighbor machine learning algorithm. But it will be shared in the slide deck of Jan, where it gives a little bit more information about it.
Maybe the API question is a good one, as we are a tech company.
Yeah, already.
Are you already? Okay.
So basically, time for one last question. And this one we kept for the last moment. When is the next webinar? Well, it will be in February. We will share the exact date also to all the people who are live here today. And we spent exactly 59 minutes now, so we try to keep it an hour always. If you have any ideas or things you want to hear during the next session about stats, about clients, or someone you would like to hear tell about what we do, either we can have one more specific on tech or more on the real football aspects of showing some match footage compared with the stats. But those are the things we are open for. So please share your comments, your feedback. And of course, if you want to have a session with Jacco, one of the data scouts, or just want to try out the platform yourself, I think you can click on this link, and then you can start your free trial. And we hope to see you again in February.
I think you already told it, but we got a lot of questions, and based on the time, we cannot answer all the questions, but we will answer questions in a one-on-one sessions or by mail or so if there are questions, please ask them by mail or through the portal as well. So I'm more than willing to give answer, because I've got nothing to do tonight, which Giels already explained to you.
And as you said, we forgot to mention, I believe, the content will be shared with you of this webinar, so you can always watch Jacco, Jan, or me again and have more information. So the 1 hour is up. Thanks a lot for being here. Over 250 people joined this this webinar, and it was a great pleasure to host it for you. And I hope to see you next time.
Thanks.